Welcome back to the Budget Archive. My name is Mitch. It's actually my second time recording the intro, as I finished editing and went to check the channel and saw that we have now surpassed 1,200 subscribers. So I just want to thank everyone for all the support. And with that, we are now confirmed for the double CSR giveaway. This is the last video you can enter on. Also, make sure to go back and check out the other videos in order to enter on those as well. We'll get on to this deck list. In our material deck, we have Spirit of Wind, Arisanna Herbalist Prodigy. Has the effect of on enter, gather twice. So you roll a d6, and depending on what number you roll, you'll summon a herb corresponding to that number, and all the herbs have different effects. Arisanna Master Alchemist has on enter, gather twice again, and the inherited effect of at the beginning of your end phase, you may sacrifice 2 herbs with the same name if you do draw a card. This is a great way to gain influence and refill your hand, as well as get counters on Polaris, as we'll see soon. And it's important to remember that you still have this when you go to level 3. Arisanna Astral Zenith. Once per turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay a card's star cooling cost. As we'll see, a lot of the cards in this deck have star cooling, and this is going to be your main way of dealing a lot of damage to your opponent fast through Cosmic Bolts and Comet Falls. Ingredient Pouch. This is a 0 cost, class bonus, 1 tap gather. This is your main way of creating herbs in the deck, and it is important that you try and get this out as early as possible in order to generate a ton of herbs to then get a lot of counters on Polaris and crack that for as much as possible. Necklace of Foresight. This is a 1 cost Cleric Regalia that has class bonus of costing 1 less to materialize, and you can banish Necklace of Foresight, Glimpse 4. So in this deck, a lot of the ways that you do damage is by glimpsing and star cooling off the top of your deck. So this is a great Regalia to have for the late game in order to bring it out and then be able to just stack the top of your deck if you need to, but also if you just find that Comet Fall or the Cosmic Bolt off the top that you need, you can just play it for free using level 3's ability. Orb of Glitter. This is a 1 cost at the beginning of Recollection phase, Glimpse 1, and you can banish it to draw a card. So of course in this deck we want to have the Glimpse as much as possible, and this is a great thing to have just for a budget version of this deck. You might not play this in the proper version just because the Regalia can be so full and not a lot of wiggle room in it. But in this budget version, I do feel that this is a great thing to have just because at the beginning of each Recollection phase, you look at the top one, you can either star call, put it at the bottom, or if you really want to, leave it there, draw a card, and then go for something that allows you to glimpse as well. It is also a great thing to have that if you crack something like a Necklace of Foresight, and maybe there's 1 star calling card in that lot, but there is another card in there that you really want to keep, you can stack the top of your deck, put the 1 or 2 cards that you don't want on the bottom of your deck, and then in Recollection, do the Orb of Glitter trigger, and then reveal that 1 star calling card from the top of your deck. Polaris Twinkling Cauldron. This is the main card that makes this deck work. It has Arisanna bonus of you may activate this card from your material deck. If you do, it enters the field rested. What this means is that during your main phase, while the stack is clear, you can activate this from your material deck, bring it onto the field, and having it enter the field rested. Effectively bypassing a materialization phase required. However, it does mean that your opponent then has a turn where they have a chance to actually destroy it, fracturize it, or do something to stop you from being able to activate it. So it is important to remember that, especially against water decks, you most likely want to materialize this so it comes in waked up. You can then, in response to whatever they do, sacrifice a bunch of herbs and then sacrifice this. That leads us on to the next effect of whenever you sacrifice a herb, put an age counter on Polaris. So the whole idea is that sacrifice as many herbs as possible, get a bunch of age counters on it, and then you get the next effect, which is a class bonus tap it, banish Polaris, deal X damage to all allies, then generate up to X Cosmic Bolt cards and shuffle them into your deck. X is the amount of age counters that were on Polaris. So a lot of the time you're going to be sacrificing this for 5 or 6 most likely. There are times when I've got it up to 10, 11, 12. However, that isn't very common. This is also the reason that this deck is pretty expensive, just because you have to have multiple Cosmic Bolts just in your deck box effectively, outside of the game, ready to generate with this card. Safeguard Amulet, 0 cost, banish it. If your champion would take non-combat damage this turn, prevent 4 of that damage. It's great into Spellslinger decks and anything that's doing non-combat damage. Terraforming, 0 cost, banish Terraforming until end of turn. Players can't declare attacks unless they pay 2 for each attack declaration. Activate this ability only during your opponent's Recollection phase. This is just great into any attack-based deck or ally deck that you want to hold up and stop them from being able to kill you for a turn. Cosmic Astroscope. This is a 1 cost with class bonus. If an opponent would glimpse X, you may have that player glimpse 3 instead. This doesn't come up very often, but it may come up against something like Rye or the likes, where they are trying to glimpse for 8 or 9, and instead you can just tell them no, they have to glimpse 3. It also has the effect of tapping it and glimpsing 3 yourself. So, of course, in this deck, especially into the late game, you want to be glimpsing a lot and searching through the deck to find the kill cards. So this is a great Regalia to bring out and be able to just start cycling through the top of your deck. Lunar Conduit. This is a 1 cost, as class bonus of costing 1 less to materialize. Whenever you activate an Astra element card, put a charge counter on Lunar Conduit. It then has the ability of pay 3 and tap it. As a spell, deal an amount of damage to target unit equals the amount of charge counters on Lunar Conduit, then remove a charge counter. So of course, with a vast majority of our deck being Astra, especially into the late game, this can deal a ton of damage, especially if you've got something like 2 or 3 Astra Sites in hand. Bring this out, play Astra Site, play Astra Site, play Astra Site, you've already got 3 counters on it, and then in your recollection phase you can probably play this, deal 3 damage, recollect, and just keep playing Astra cards and getting more and more charge counters on it throughout the turn. In our main board we are running 4 copies of Fast Cure. This is a 2 cost. If target opponent's influence is greater than yours, recover 4, and has floating memory. This is great into a lot of decks where you just want to be able to regain a bit of health in the late game, or if you just need to get some fast activation floating memory into your bin in order to level up. Gentle Respite. This is a 3 cost slow speed that if target opponent's influence is greater than yours, draw a card in memory, and has floating memory itself. So this is something that I cut out of the main Arisanna deck. However, I do feel that this deck is a little bit slow, so you probably need the extra influence gain as well as the extra floating memory. It is also a good card to play if you know your opponent is going to get rid of your floating memory, because you can effectively play this, draw a card into your memory, and then straight away, because your opponent hasn't gained priority yet, activate the Polaris from your material deck, using this to pay the cost, effectively meaning your opponent's not going to gain any priority to get rid of it before that happens. Running 3 copies of Nascent Barrier. This is a 2 cost with class bonus, prevent the next 1+ level damage to be dealt to your champion this turn, and the level 3+ effect of Glimpse 3. So in this deck we are going to be dealing with a lot of damage being dealt to us fast, and very few ways of preventing that. So this is going to be one of our main prevention spells, with the bonus effect of if you've gone to level 3, or if you've got one of the +1 level herbs, you can sacrifice that herb first, get to level 3, play this, not only preventing 4 damage, but then also being able to stack the top of your deck going into your next turn. Oasis Trading Post. This is a bit an odd one for this deck. You won't have probably seen many Arisanna decks play this one. However, I just felt that, especially in the budget version of Arisanna, where we don't have access to 3 visits and the likes, we needed a way to guarantee the glimpse late game as well as to gain a bit of value early on. So with it being a 3 cost, it's effectively going to be a 2-1 play only. If you see it later in the game, you're going to try and glimpse it to the bottom or just get rid of it. However, it does have the effect of paying 3 and tapping it to glimpse 2. So in the late game, you can, if you're holding up interaction during the opponent's turn, they don't do anything in the end, you can then go into your turn, or even at the end of their turn, pay the 3, glimpse 2, get rid of the stuff on the top of your deck you don't care about, or possibly even play something like a Cosmic Bolt from the top for the star cooling cost. It also has the effect of pay 4, tap it and gather. So if you do go second, you will have 8 cards in hand, pay 3 down to play this, leaving 4 in hand. So a lot of the time you can then go to your opponent's turn, let them do whatever they're going to do, and then pay 4 together, giving you an extra herb when you go into your level 1 Arisanna turn. So then you can start gaining a lot more herbs, a lot more counters on Polaris quickly, and just gives you something to do every turn. Running 4 copies of Resolute Stand. So 3 cost fast activation. If target unit be dealt attack combat damage this turn, prevent 3 of that damage. It also has the level 2 effect if you may activate this card without paying its reserve cost if you do skip your next draw phase. Now in this deck we do have quite a few different ways to draw cards, so this may be an option for you in order to just survive and not have to put your whole hand down, especially if you're trying to hold up something like an Astral Seal. However, generally we're going to try to pay the full cost to keep our influence high and gain as many cards as possible. Running 3 copies of Tender Land. It's a slow speed that has class bonus of fast activation. So if you are Arisanna already, this will have fast activation, so you ignore the slow speed part of it. And has gather, then draw a card. So as mentioned, we are trying to generate as many herbs as possible, as fast as possible. So this is a great card to have in order to do that. because it not only replaces itself but gives you a herb, allows you to put stuff into your memories and then level up. Running 4 copies of Wisdom Reprise. This is a 1 cost with Glimpse 3 and a level 3 plus effect of draw a card into memory. Of course, we're trying to glimpse as much as possible in this deck, so this card is just a no-brainer. The level 3 plus effect can hurt sometimes, especially if this is the only thing you can play early in the game. However, a lot of the time you're going to hold on to this and wait till you go level 3, and then in your recollection phase, activate this to not just cycle through the deck, but then also and hopefully to hit something with Star Calling off the top straight away. Fertile Grounds. We're running 4 of these as 3 cost. At the beginning of your recollection phase, summon a token copy of a herb item you control. This is your optimum turn 1 play. If you can get this out turn 1, then go into Arisanna straight away, generate 2 herbs, and then at the beginning of your recollection phase, copy one of those herbs. You'll then be in a prime position to when you go into your next turn as Arisanna level 2, being able to then sacrifice those 2 herbs that you've now got 2, 3, 4 copies of, because you'll have a couple Fertile Ground triggers once you go on level 2 as well. You are just setting yourself up to draw a ton of cards, get a bunch of counters on Polaris, and just be in a great position for the rest of the game. 4 copies of Scout the Land. This is a 2 cost fast activation. I'll look at the top 4 cards of your deck and put them back in any order and draw a card. So this also combos well with the Orbit Glitter, enabling you to look at the top 4 cards, stack them however you want, draw the one out of the 4 that you really want, and then most likely put something with Star Calling back on top, enabling you to then use the Orbit Glitter trigger to glimpse it, and then being able to Star Call it off the top for free. Slicing Trap. We're running 3 copies of this. Class bonus is not going to do anything with non-assassin, however it has the deal 2 damage to target ally, then negate all on-enter triggers from that ally. So a lot of our problems are going to be from other level 3 decks that are rushing level 3 and gaining that advantage of being at level 3 first. So this is a great thing to have in order to actually just slow them down, put them a turn behind, allowing you to get one step ahead. It is also good into a lot of different ally decks that run a lot of creatures that have on-enter effects that may cause a problem for you. So it's just a very versatile card that I figured was worth having. Zephyr, we're running 1 of this. It's a 2 cost, suppress target ally or Regalia. You probably do want to run 2 in this deck, however I just didn't quite find the room for it, and I feel like having 1 off copy is probably good enough. This is mainly there for if your opponent's got something like a Safeguard or other Regalia that's causing you problems, that you can then Zephyr that in order to actually go for the kill. Astra Sight is 0 cost, glimpse 1, then draw a card, and has Star Calling 0. So the thing to point out here is that Arisanna level 3 is once per turn you may pay 0, so you don't have to pay the 0 and use up the effect. So if you find an Astra Sight off your glimpse at the beginning of the turn, you can Star Call for 0 without using Arisanna's ability, allowing you to then glimpse another one, hopefully find another Star Calling card, and then use Arisanna's ability to play that card. This is just a great cycling thing as well, enabling you to put stuff on top of your deck on the bottom that you don't want. It also replaces itself, and things that replace themselves are always good. Astral Seal is a 3 cost fast activation. Negate target card activation, banish the card that had its activation negated this way. This card costs 3 less to activate if it targets an activation of a card with the same name as a card in any banishment. So this effectively allows you to control a game if you know what your opponent's main kill card is and that they've already got one in their banishment. There are times where you may be prepared to just have this 1 card in hand, baiting your opponent into thinking they're able to kill you. But most of the time you are going to want to hold up 4 cards, enabling you to pay the full cost of this just in case. But it is an option to use that effect if needed. Commentary Vantage. So the one thing I had a problem with when I was building this deck was glimpsing. There wasn't enough glimpsing options, and there wasn't enough fast speed glimpsing options. Of course, 3 visits is your main way to glimpse in this deck a lot of the time, and with us not having access to that, I had to find something that was just as good to replace it. And I figured that this would probably be the best thing for that. It's a 1 cost fast activation with an effect of choose 1. If your champion is distant, choose 2 instead. Of course, in this deck, we're never going to be distant, so you're always only going to be choosing 1. And most of the time, you're going to be glimpsing 4. There may be times where you already know what's on top of your deck, and you want to pay the 1 to draw a card, then enable you to go for a glimpse from there. However, generally, the glimpse 4 is going to be the most powerful effect on this, and the third effect just has no effect on this deck. Comet Fall, this is a 5 cost, deal 3 damage to all non-Astra element units. Class bonus, deal 4 damage to those units instead. So the main thing here is it has a star calling of 2. So if you do glimpse it from the top of your deck, you can pay 2 to play this card instead and put all the other cards revealed on the bottom in any order. This is your main card that you want to find when you're against allies and the likes, because of course we don't have a lot of removal. So our main ways to remove allies are going to be Polaris when you crack it and Comet Full. If you've gone to level 3 and your opponent's got a board of allies, this is probably the best thing for you to glimpse for and try and find. Cosmic Bolt, this is your main kill card. This is what's generated with Polaris. It is a 3-cost slow speed that has Star Calling 2. Star Calling, of course, can be done at fast speed. It bypasses the timing restriction of the card, so it's going to be the main way you can actually play this. It often feels really bad having to pay 3 and play it at slow speed. And it has the effect of deal 4 damage to target unit, plus an additional 2 for each card named Cosmic Bolt in your graveyard and banishment. So as we go through the game, you're going to be playing these, getting more and more into your graveyard. You've possibly banished 1 or 2 in order to level up. It's not the worst card to lose when you're leveling up. Each of those ones you play are going to add an extra 2 to this. By the end of the game, you're generally going to be doing about 10 or 12 damage per Cosmic Bolt. Lunaseer, this is a 2-cost 1/3 ally with Star Calling 1. So it's an ally that you can then bring out at fast activation onto the field, and then has class bonus tap it and glimpse 2. If you are glimpsing 1 or 2, this is a great card to be able to bring out, because then you can not only bring it out, put whatever else was in there that you didn't want on the bottom of your deck, but then activate it straight away again in order to glimpse another 2 to keep cycling through your deck. Spell Shield Astra. This is a 4-cost fast activation that has a class bonus of this card costs 2 less to activate. The next time damage be dealt to your champion this turn, prevent that damage. Glimpse X, where X is the amount of damage prevented this way. So against a lot of the OTK decks that are dealing massive fireballs or just massive attacks, this is a great card to find, because not only you can prevent whatever massive attack is coming at you, but you're also going to be able to glimpse a ton. There have been times when I've glimpsed 12, 13 cards off a Spell Shield Astra, and you're able to just completely set up the top of your deck for the perfect next turn, enabling you to do something like an Orbital Glitter Trigger, play a Cosmic Bolt off top, move into Recollection, keep going, and play something else, glimpse, pay the 2 to play the Cosmic Bolt, because of course you would already use Arisanna's ability, or possibly if you had the influence in Recollection, you could have just paid for it outright anyway. And it's just a game winner if you manage to get a massive glimpse off of this. In our sideboard, we're running Nullifying Lantern. So one of the main weaknesses of this deck are aggro decks like Pfizer, which are trying to kill it down fast. So Nullifying Lantern can be a good thing to bring in order to bring out and just turn off their graveyards, stop them from getting those massive rendings early on. And it's just a great interaction piece to have. I probably would run something like a Censor instead if this deck had the budget room for it. We're also running Consumption Ring. This is a new DTR card that is absolutely amazing in Arisanna. It's a 0-cost banish it. Until end of turn, non-allied cards your opponents activate cost 4 more to activate. Activate this ability only during your opponent's recollection phase. So with this, you go to your opponent's recollection phase, you crack this. Now any negates, any fireballs, anything they play is going to cost 4 more to activate, giving you their turn in order to glimpse and play Cosmic Bolts without really having to worry about them having interaction for it, because most of the time they're either not going to have the cards for it, or if they do, it's going to force them to put their whole hand down, then also giving you your next turn in order to kill them. We're also running 3 copies of Serum Wisdom. This is one of those cards I thought about putting in the main board. It is fairly good in this deck. It's not amazing. You can brew it by sacrificing 3 herbs, so you don't have to pay any cost for it, and that can also put those herb triggers onto Polaris. It has the ability of sacrifice it, glimpse 3, draw a card to memory. So it's very like Wisdom's Reprise, except it's going to be a card that you have to set up ahead of time. However, if something like Stifling Trap isn't very impactful in the game that you're playing, this is a great option. Also running 3 copies of Arrow Trap. So I've kind of ticked this deck into what the meta looks like at the moment, in terms of there's a lot of the Shinju alloys running around. And because of that, this is just a great thing to have in order for if your opponent does go for the massive kill, then you can just respond by returning it to their hand, which with it being a Regalia will return it to its material deck, and a lot of the time that will just end that deck full outright. We're also running 3 copies of Scatter Essence. This is Destroy Target Fantasia with Floating Memory. So there's a lot of fractals running around, as well as other Arisannas and the Fire Die Shell decks that you quite often want to slow down or just get rid of their main pieces that are going to cause you problems. So this is just there as an option to bring in those situations. For our Regalia upgrades, we have Center of Restful Peace. Now, a lot of the fire decks running around are running liminal guides as well as a lot of float, mainly being Merlin. So because of this, I felt like Sensor is a good thing to bring into the deck just because you're able to shut those decks down and you don't care about floating memory as much. Can hurt you, of course, so you have to be careful when you bring it out. We have Grand Crusader's Ring, always a good card to have. I did look at possibly putting in Quicksilver Grail, however I just felt in this deck the card advantage is more needed, as once you go to level 3 you often do have very few cards left. Spirit of Serene Wind, this was actually in the deck list originally, and then I realised that we kind of do need to fit extra Cosmic Bolts into the budget. So because of that, it is one of the upgrade cards. However, I would recommend trying to get one just to have that extra search through your deck for those starting pieces, as well as being able to recover 6 in the late game. As we are not running a huge amount of wind, you often aren't going to be affected by losing this. And then we have Nullifying Mirror. This isn't a needed Regalia, however I just felt it would be useful against a lot of the wind decks that are running a lot of Veiling at the moment. So there's an option to have in your sideboard to bring in against those if you do need to get that extra damage through without having to worry about it getting prevented. Main board, Dungeon Guide of course, it's needed for all level 3 decks effectively. If you don't already have a playset Dungeon Guides, I'd recommend going and getting a playset. Blanche, great prevention card against a lot of the Spellslinger decks and the high OTK decks using spells like Merlin. It's just one of those good sideboard cards that, again, I'd recommend getting if you plan on playing a lot of level 3 decks. Hoarder Counter is probably the best counter you can have in this deck. It is $20.49 each, hence why they do not fit in the budget version of the deck. However, if you are wanting to play Arisanna on a competitive level, you probably want to look at picking up 2 or 3 of these. We didn't have 3 visits. This is one of those must-have cards for Arisanna. I do feel like the deck is a lot worse without it, so if you do have the budget to go and buy some, I would recommend getting a playset of this. You rest your champion. If you do, glimpse 2 and recover 2. This has been errated now, so you must rest your champion as an additional cost of this, which means that it isn't as broken as it was, but it just gives you consistent glimpse throughout the game, as well as recovering 2 every time you're able to play it. We have Beseech the Winds as well. At $27.12, this is probably a good pickup at the moment. Generally, you're only running probably 2 copies of this in the deck. However, it is a good card to get, just if you are wanting to get that 1-step advantage on your opponent, similar to DG. However, you can play this earlier on and bring something like Polaris out already awake, enabling you to then start combing off straight away without having to worry about missing a materialization phase in order to bring Polaris out if they are playing something like Fracturize. So we have our material deck coming in at $3.12, our main deck coming in at $29.69, and our sideboard coming in at $2.39. So the main reason that this deck does become quite expensive is that for every extra Cosmic Bolt you want to have ready to bring into the deck, it's going to be an extra $1.99. Quite often, if your playgroup is okay with it, I'd recommend just proxying the extra Cosmic Bolts, just because it does add up quite quickly trying to get a whole bunch of them together. However, if you are going to a proper competition, you are going to require to have every copy that you need to generate, as if you do not have enough copies in order to generate for the number of counters on Polaris, you will just fail to generate and only generate as many as you actually have. So overall, this brings our deck total to $35.20. So with our budget of $50, you can fit 7 Cosmic Bolts in your sideboard here. There are a few additions to the deck which could bring the price of the deck up and make it a little bit more consistent. However, then we wouldn't have any budget for Cosmic Bolts in our extra deck. So I just decided to keep it as it is, keep the Cosmic Bolts within the budget, because if you are going to a competition, you're going to be required to buy those. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below to enter the giveaway. You have till the 31st of October US time, or 1st of November New Zealand time in order to enter, and then we'll be running the giveaway. Until next time, stay safe.